Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reviewing Star Wars Acolyte Episode 6, the latest one. Now, there are essentially two sides to this episode. As we saw in the last one, that Kamir took Osha with him, and Sol, unbeknownst to him, takes May with him. Now, these four characters are the primary four for this episode. There are some scenes that take place back at the Jedi Temple, but they're minimal and have minimal screen time in this episode in total. With this episode, Sol and May's story unfortunately falls on the lackluster side of what this episode is. Their story unfortunately becomes a little boring only because of the pacing of their story, which isn't much to begin with. They're on the ship, and we know that Osha is really May. May is the one with Sol, and the Basil is there. We assume that the Basil sort of has information that maybe Osha is May, but since the Basil doesn't speak basic, we can't really know what he's thinking. So for this episode, there are circumstances happening. Sol tries to reach the Jedi Temple, but there's no clear signal. The next thing, he has to check on the ship, so he sends May to go check on the ship. The Basil confronts May, there's a 2-second fight, Basil gets away. So really the only thing that ends up happening with their story, which takes up nearly, I would say, half the screen time of this episode, is Sol ends up stunning May. She wakes up, restrained, and Sol tells her that he knows it's May and they're going to have a conversation. But they don't have that conversation in this episode. That's really all that happened with them. Now back at the Jedi Temple, there's a Jedi that tried to descramble the signal Sol sent out. They couldn't really hear much. They just know that it sounds like people are dead. So Vanastra takes a small team to Kofor, where Sol and the team were, to investigate what happened. When they arrive on the planet, Vanastra almost seems to kind of recognize the work of Kamir. They see the bodies, which the subtle detail I noticed is presumably hours, maybe even a day or more later. Vanastra shows up and sees the bodies of all these Jedi. To me, this is confirmation that these Jedi did not survive. That means that we actually have people dying by way of lightsaber now, which is interesting for Star Wars. It's a new direction to die by lightsabers, but it's happening. It happened to nearly 10 Jedi, and I can't wait to see this detail continue for the next 2 episodes of this series. So Vernestra takes out her light whip to attack a bug, and the scene's something generic. In the trailer, this is the shot we see of her light whip. So the scene isn't underwhelming. It only feels that way because I think others like myself hyped up the shot of the light whip that we recognize from the trailer. So seeing that she goes to this planet, we thought maybe Kamir's master or an ally could be here and fight Vernestra. It turns out the light whip was only used for a bug. But the scene just is what it is. I personally overhyped it for myself, and I found this scene boring only because I expected more from it. It is what it is. Vernestra seems to recognize the work and seems to allude to the fact that someone is setting up plans. She doesn't really give a lot of information, but we seem to believe that she might know who's responsible for this. And that's the extent of her story in this episode. So, as we get to the part that I feel that I can speak for most Star Wars fans that everyone cared about, and that is learning more about Kamir. Osha wakes up, sees Kamir walking around in this cave, and she follows him to these waters. Now, this planet is unknown. It looks similar to Octu. I'm seeing some people on YouTube are suggesting this planet has similarities to the one in the opening of the Darth Plagueis novel. Unfortunately, it's just speculation right now because we have no real confirmation as to which planet this is. I know that the director for Star Wars Acolyte commented and said there is a deliberate reason why it's not Act 2. So I think either she's going to have it be the one connected to the Darth Plagueis book, or it's meant for a completely separate story. That's the only confirmation, is that it's not Octu. It's all the confirmation we got. As Osha continues following Khmer through these waters, we can't tell what's going on. He just goes for a swim, but some people believe that these could be healing waters, and I'll tell you why in a moment. For this episode, I don't know enough about legends as others, so a lot of my information comes from other YouTubers, but I want to share some of the things that others have noticed with you guys, because I think it's pretty interesting stuff. So in this episode, Khmer confirms to Osha that he used to be a Jedi. He says it was a long time ago. And these are theories that some YouTubers have suggested to believe that maybe these healing waters are keeping him young. He could very much be much older than he looks. That's one aspect that could go into it. Another reason why he said in the last episode, Jedi would call him a Sith, but not claiming to be one. He could be a former Jedi and a former Sith apprentice, being cast out before reaching the title of Darth, and that is why he is a dark side user with the red lightsaber, but not a Darth or Sith Lord. This, I think, would be a fascinating choice for the show. There's no confirmation, but I think it's a very interesting theory. This episode also does confirm that he's now attempting to recruit Osha to be his new pupil, his acolyte. And he seems to be taking a different approach with Osha than he did with May. He saw the hatred in May and the need for revenge. He tells Osha that he expected more than just revenge from May. But that's all he ever saw. Ultimately, that's why he cut her off, and now he sees something more in Osha. Osha may, in fact, might join him eventually. I feel if it happens, it would be brief, but we'll have to see in the next coming episodes. When they're having a conversation in this cave, we do see a cortosis deposit, as he confirms it himself that his helmet is made out of cortosis. This alone explains so much from episode 5 when it's used against lightsabers, and there's plenty of uses for cortosis, legends and canon, so that's very exciting to see Star Wars reintroduce it, and I'm excited to see how many projects now will use cortosis. I think it's great, it's part of canon, and I'm excited to see where they go with this. With the helmet, we do learn that there is extremely minimal eyesight with the helmet, but he gives a confirmation to why. Stormtroopers often, including First Order Stormtroopers mostly, have extremely thin eyesight, but they're soldiers, so you would assume they need eyesight to fire, but they just look cool because plot. Khmer's story, there's actually a purpose, and the helmet is meant to block out eyesight, so he's reliant on the Force and his senses. So not only did he kill these 10 Jedi with 3 different combat methods, but he also did it mostly through just seeing through the Force. We've also seen this kind of twice before with Kanan Jarrus and Ram Koda, Legends and Canon. Now, of course, Khmer is not blind, but him not really having much eyesight at all with the helmet on proves he can fight essentially the way Ram Koda and Kanan Jarrus did, which I think is interesting, having a character like that in canon. Like I said, even though he's not blind. I think it's an interesting thing. If he can fight without his eyesight, it could be cool if maybe episode 7 or 8 he ultimately does get blinded, and then it's revealed to the Jedi that doesn't stop him from fighting. It could be a really cool thing later on. At the end of this episode, his helmet plays a small part where Osha actually puts on the helmet, and her breathing is the last shot of the episode. We don't know if she's about to be mind controlled, she's about to feel the dark side, feel the Force. We don't really know what's going on because this was the final shot. So I think there's plenty of opportunity to take that shot into a lot of different story directions. So I'm excited to see what episode 7 has to offer. Khmer is an extremely interesting character. I think Osha will definitely have a larger part than May overall, especially now. And I think there are a lot of opportunities with Soul reaching the Jedi Council or not reaching the Jedi Council. The Sith could still be unknown to the Jedi if he never makes it there. But even if he does, since Khmer is not technically a Sith Lord, They can still kill him off in this series, and they still don't believe that Sith are back. Whether or not Khmer has a master or had a master, and if he does or did, we still don't know if it could have been Tenebris or Plagueis. There's a lot to be revealed in the last 2 episodes. I am hearing some sources, uncredible, saying that these next 2 episodes are going to have a lot of action similar to episode 5. I hope it's true, but this is only rumors. Irregardless, I'm intrigued, interested, and hyped for the last 2 episodes of this season. Thank you guys for sticking with me and watching. Keep it digging, and I can't wait to review episode 7. Thanks again.